When we talk about the greatest players of all time, one subject seems to crop up over and over again, and that's their best performances. From Kobe's 81-point game to Tim Duncan's near quadruple double, hundreds of videos talk about every single one. Well, today, I want to do things differently. And no, I'm not here to talk about a player's worst performance. I want to talk about the time when one of the history's best guards completely changed his play style in the span of one quarter. Not Allen Iverson's dribbling or Magic's passing or Gary Payton's defense. I'm talking about... Actually, you know what? I think you should just see it for yourself.
Looking for a shot a ton here tonight. Gives it up to Draymond Green and count the basket.
Did Curry just turn down a somewhat open three in favor of a pass? This, ladies and gentlemen, is only the tip of the iceberg. But first, let's roll back a bit to set up the scene. We're in March 2022, just 3 months after Steph Curry beat the NBA's all-time three-pointer record, cementing his status as the greatest shooter this league has ever seen. If you needed one guy to make a three-point shot to save your life, you'd probably go with Curry. Sorry, Max.
It's on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth. You better hit it. I want Iguodala.
So yeah. From that point on, everyone and their mother was forced to agree that there wasn't a single player better at shooting than Curry in the history of the league. So where does he go from there, you might ask? Well, how about becoming the greatest point guard ever? Now to get there, he needs to surpass a pretty big obstacle, and that's the legacy of Magic Johnson. And when you have Michael Jordan himself saying that Magic is still the best point guard of all time, you kind of know that you still got a ways to go. Now, at that time, Curry's argument to claim that spot had two flaws. First of all, Curry not only just had 3 rings compared to Magic's 5, but he also had never won a Finals MVP trophy, with one having gone to Iguodala and the other 2 going to KD. So, the question that fans were always bringing up was, how could you be at the top of the all-time point guard list when you weren't even the top dog on your team? Don't attack me in the comments. I know that Curry has been the cornerstone of the Golden State dynasty, but when you're going against a guy like Magic, who has 3 Finals MVPs, every extra accolade counts. Another pretty important detail is that in order for him to win the Finals MVP, he needs to, get to the finals. And given the state of the Warriors in March 2022, he was pretty far from it. In case you forgot, the Warriors team during that season was comprised of an injured Draymond, a Klay Thompson who was playing his first season after 2 years of battling injuries, Kevon Looney, who had just become a full-time starter for the first time in his career, and an Andrew Wiggins, who was playing his first competitive season after he spent the first 6 years of his career playing for the hopeless Timberwolves. This was the bunch that Curry had to carry on his back and lead to the finals in hopes of him getting his 4th ring, and that elusive Finals MVP. They had just lost their previous game against Minnesota despite a 34-point effort from Steph, and he was clearly very annoyed by it. He needed his teammates to lock in because he knew that at that point, no matter how great he played, if his squad didn't contribute, he didn't have the slightest chance at another ring. And speaking of contribution, we can also talk about the second thing that is holding Curry back in the greatest point guard conversation, and that is the other facets of his game. Traditionally, a point guard's primary role should be facilitating and playmaking. Now with Steph, this comes a little bit differently, right? Because his shooting is so efficient, so good, that his gravity on the court is what gets his teammates open. That, coupled with his historic off-ball skills, make him a little bit of an unorthodox type of point guard. And as said previously, in the grand scheme of things, Curry is easily one of the best players of all time. But when the guy on the other side of the ring is Magic, the measuring standards are slightly different. As a reminder, Magic averaged 12 assists per game in the 50 finals games he played in. That's double the assists that Curry averaged despite him playing 36 final games. And so we find ourselves on the 3rd of March, 2022, Dallas versus the Warriors. Now to the casual eye, this was a Curry versus Luka matchup, right? When in reality, it was Curry against history. And as always, the chef cooked. I mean, come on, he was in the zone. He knew that his team needed him, and he delivered, dropping 21 points on more than 50% from the field and 80% from the three-point line in just 3 quarters. Steph was scorching hot. It was a masterclass in offensive basketball, a true genius showing everyone how it's done. Despite all of this, though, the Warriors were still trailing by 8 points at the end of the 3rd quarter. And so Curry decided that he had enough. A switch flipped in his head as he came to the realization that he had to do things differently. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, the greatest shooter of all time decided to stop shooting. This seems totally crazy, right? Well, follow along and you'll quickly understand the genius behind this move. The thing is, Steph understood that if his teammates didn't have a wake-up call soon, they were going to waste the season and ultimately he would get one step further from his goal. He needed them to step up, and what better way to do so than to give them all the scoring responsibility? On the other side of things, the Mavericks have figured out the perfect way to stop the Warriors, and that's by deploying a box-and-one defensive scheme. This tactical disposition is the go-to method to stop a team that has an offensive superstar with a bunch of underperforming players around him. And that's exactly what the Golden State Warriors were at that time. This defensive tactic is pretty simple to set up. You just have to have 4 players in a zone, with the 5th one acting as a chaser who does not leave the side of the star player who you want to shut down. Just look at this clip. Reggie Bullock does not give Steph any room to breathe, even when he doesn't have the ball. Here, Steph isn't even in the frame, but Reggie still stays on his side. And the advantage of having a chaser stuck to the superstar is that you can easily set up double teams on him so you can completely stop him from having any shooting space. This, in turn, keeps building the star player's frustration, forcing him to take bad shots and ultimately tiring him out. Well, at least in theory. Because when you have Steph against you, nothing's really going to go as planned, right? And while the Mavs thought that their plan to stop him was working, they were actually playing right into his hands. Now, of course, a guy like Steph can release a shot even with the tiniest of spaces. I mean, in this position, do you really think that the chef couldn't score from here? I mean, we're talking about a guy who showed us time and time again that he can swish it from anywhere, no matter how much you think you've smothered him on defense. But on this day, the Mavs gave him an opportunity to execute his plan and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. First, it was the perfect excuse to give his teammates the ball and put them in situations where they were forced to step up their game. He needed them to become good enough threats so that the opponents would focus on them and ultimately give him more space. And yeah, in this random March game, it wasn't really a priority, but come playoff time, they had to be ready. He also wanted to teach his team to stop over-relying on him. I mean, if you were Jordan Poole or Kevon Looney and you missed a shot, you probably wouldn't think that it was much of a problem since you had Steph on your side. To give you an idea, in this Dallas game, after 3 quarters, Klay and Wiggins had scored a combined 31 points on 29 shots taken. You absolutely cannot have an efficiency this bad and expect to win a championship. On the other side of the coin, Steph wanted to take this occasion to showcase his playmaking skills. As we talked about before, his relative lack of direct facilitating was something that was used against him in the greatest point guard of all time debate. And so he wanted to show that him not getting as many assists was just a matter of choice, not because of lack of skill. He would keep using his excellent positioning and running skills, but instead of trying to get an open shot for himself, he was going to try to put his teammates into the best position possible to get a bucket. In this play here, for example, Curry continues dribbling despite getting under the rim and opts instead to make a pass to Poole. And again, it's not like Curry couldn't make a shot from there, as he has one of the best floater packages in the league. It's more that he wanted to show Jordan Poole that he trusted him so that he could get his confidence up. This is the work of a true leader, ladies and gentlemen, of a man who knows what it takes to make another player great, a true ceiling raiser. Oh, and this display of playmaking prowess couldn't have come at a better time because on that same court was Luka Doncic, one of this generation's best playmakers. Steph decided to take him on in a duel, proving to the world that he knew what he was capable of. And boy, did he show off. As in just the fourth quarter alone, Steph recorded 5 assists. To put that number into perspective, that's the same number of assists that the entire Mavericks squad had in the same time span. That's pretty impressive from a guy who's apparently not a good playmaker, right? The chef simply had a mission and he executed it perfectly. Ultimately, though, the Warriors didn't win this game, but that wasn't Steph's goal. He had planted in his squad's mind the seeds of success. He made them understand their importance on the team. Steph was betting on a long-term vision here, and his genius and intuition would ultimately prove correct, as only 4 months later, thanks to great performances from all the role players on the Golden State Warriors, they would take home the Larry O'Brien Trophy, with Curry, of course, earning the Finals MVP that he so badly longed for. So do you guys think that now with this achievement, Steph is the greatest point guard of all time? Or does he still need something more to surpass Magic? Let's discuss together down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.